The miracles of modern medicine.
50
is the new 40.
Big surprise.
Because it's Thursday.
Hello, Watchtower Database, and welcome back to The Vanishing Point, the only bi-weekly YouTube show that dissects small chunks of the DCAU timeline to answer questions you probably never thought to ask. This is a video I never thought needed to be made, but thinking about it, it's probably been one of the most frequent questions that has shown up in our comment section, so I guess it's time we finally talk about it. What exactly is the deal with Justice League Unlimited's The Once and Future Thing? I've heard this question posed so many different ways since I started working on the channel. If X happens, then why does Y? See, this proves Batman Beyond is an alternate timeline, etc, etc, etc. Usually they all have to do with this exchange between future Bruce Wayne and Static.
Think about it. If old Bruce is here, that means he already lived through this as Batman.
Flawless logic. Except that I have no memory of ever going to the future and meeting my older self or of anything else that's happening today.
And sure, I get it. I guess. Time travel does get confusing. I mean, already we've done multiple videos about different aspects of the concept, and in the case of this episode, even people who were working with DC making official Justice League Unlimited tie-in comics got things confused about this episode. Take a look at Justice League Unlimited number 19, for instance. The Justice Rangers Ride Again was written by Adam Beechin, who later went on to write Batman Beyond comics, and as the title implies, serves as a follow-up to The Once and Future Thing. In the story, Wonder Woman, Elongated Man, and Vigilante are sucked into the past where they meet up with the slew of Old West era characters that we came to know from the first part of that two-part episode. Wonder Woman tries explaining the situation to the others by saying, Green Lantern, Batman, and I met them when Kronos... The reason you don't know about it is... Never mind. It's time travel. It's complicated. But...
You don't remember going on a mission with us today, do you?
I just got here.
The timeline's restored to equilibrium. We're the only two people who remember what happened.
So the premise of that story doesn't even work at all. Hey, wait a second. Why does this kid that's related to Vigilante look like Terry McGinnis? Wait, that's not the topic of this video. Past just Wonder Woman remembering this, it seems as though Warhawk remembered it as well, according to Justice League Beyond, which, while tied to Adam Beechin's Batman Beyond run, actually wasn't written by Beechin, but by Derek Friedolfs and Dustin Nguyen. So I guess it's not just Beechin getting confused. But with the people getting those sweet, sweet DC paychecks making these mistakes, I can kind of start to see why it would be confusing to others as well. Luckily, that's what I'm here for. In case you haven't pieced it together yet, today we'll be going over why the future we see in The Once and Future Thing isn't part of the main DCAU timeline, but also why it doesn't confirm Batman Beyond to be an alternate future. The first hint in all of this is found, of course, in the timeline. While we've pinned down the Batman Beyond timeline before to be in the early 2040s due to on-screen dates and mentions of passage of time such as...
No big surprise considering you just hopscotched over 40 years.
And, well... this.
Unit Zeta went renegade August 5th, 2041.
The Once and Future Thing posits that it's actually 50 years in the future.
You've traveled about 50 years into your future.
Or, as we've come to know it, 50 years from now, whenever now is. When asked about this time gap in regards to epilogue, Dwayne McDuffie explained. Promotional material said Batman Beyond took place 40 years in the future. According to Bruce Timm, it actually took place about 50 years in the future. That's 50 years from whenever you watch it, not any date set in stone. But once again, it's not just promotional materials. The 40-year gap became on-screen canon in more ways than one, and the only 2 points of contradictory evidence come from this distorted future and Once and Future Thing, and a subtitle on epilogue, which not only have we shown to be inaccurate before, but was initially billed as being 50 years in the future rather than the 65 we've become accustomed to. And you know, that 50 years minus the 15 years after Beyond puts it 35 years after JLU, which judging by Supergirl's age is about 5. Blah blah, blah, blah. It's like right there with the 40 years in the future from the TNBA STAS section of the timeline. If you need it broken down any more for you, you can check our Batman Beyond timeline video. Following from here, this behind the scenes change also explains why Static is aged up from his 40 years in the future self that we see in Future Shock. There's a McDuffie quote on this somewhere as well, but I wasn't able to relocate it, so you'll just have to take my word for it. But once again, a behind the scenes explanation isn't an in-canon explanation, and currently the most reasonable explanation for why Virgil seemingly aged 10 years but nobody else did is the fact that we're in a corrupted timeline. But this is far from the only thing that indicates such. If you'll recall, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker gave us a handful of Jokers that we had never seen before in the series via Wolf, Chucko, the Dini twins, Bonk, and Ghoul. This same set of Jokers appeared in Once and Future Thing Part 2. But if this episode was meant to indicate Batman Beyond as an alternate future, then this should be impossible. After all, we watched Bonk die in Return of the Joker, and we just established this is about 10 years further in the future than anything we've seen out of the Beyond world. For the sake of argument though, let's say that it's not. Let's say we're around the same time as the show, maybe just a teeny bit afterwards once Terry's joined the league. Not only does it still not line up since Return of the Joker occurs a bit earlier during the show, but also even if I was wrong about that, there's this.
Enjoy your stay.
You think I'm scared? I'll be running this stump in a few years.
Oh, phooey. Do you know what killed the dinosaurs?
No, sir.
Well, Chucko does.
So if Bonk dies in one and Chucko dies in the other, then there's no way to fit both stories together. And even if you could, you still would have to find an explanation as to why everybody's decked out with mechanical prosthetics like some Dr. Corso servo tech. Like, you think Terry would just whisper April Moon a couple times and that would be that.
April Moon.
But nope. Then of course, there's all the small stuff, like Cairo, who seems to be dead here.
Look, Didi, another Green Lantern. He's much cuter than the last one we killed, don't you think, Didi?
But he's still alive in Epilogue. Superman is dead.
We lost a lot of good people that day.
You mean Superman? Jean? All the others?
Yeah. You too.
But he's still alive in Epilogue too.
Kent called. Nothing apocalyptic, he just wants your opinion on a case he's working.
With Aquagirl missing from the lineup, we can assume she's dead as well, because, well...
we're all that's left of the League.
But she's also back in Epilogue. Oh, and Terry's dead too. If we're being real, by this point, we're far too many dead characters in for this to make a difference. But, he's kind of crucial to be alive in Epilogue. So, if this future doesn't line up with the future of Batman Beyond, then what gives? Well, the answer is kinda all over the episode.
The timeline's been polluted. So polluted that history itself is becoming fluid.
The reason nothing lines up isn't just because Kronos changed the past, but because he changed it so many times that it simply can't work. Trying to fit the time travel events into the main DCAU timeline is impossible, kind of like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. For all intents and purposes, when looking at the history of the DCAU, the only parts of this episode that actually happen are Batman and Green Lantern hanging out in the cafeteria, Diana approaching them, and then 50 years in the future, Kronos attempting to go back in time only to get looped by the program Batman placed into his belt, which Dwayne McDuffie explains by saying, Batman didn't know what conversation he dropped Kronos into. He did know from the belt's activity log to loop Kronos just before the trip that brought him to the Watchtower. He chose that point hoping to minimize changes to our timeline. If Batman simply returned Kronos to that point without the belt, Kronos would simply build another belt and attack again, this time with pre-knowledge of Batman's strategy. I imagine Kronos took several shots at various JLU members before finally succeeding in killing them. Batman looped Kronos because it was the only non-lethal way to protect the time stream. Speaking of Kronos being stuck in a loop, our webcomic Legacies of the DCAU actually picks up after the events of this episode in issue number 1. So if you haven't read that yet, I definitely suggest suggest you give it a shot. Hey, welcome to my messy office. I came across another quote from Dwayne McDuffie that I think is important. jl.toonzone.net, archived from the Dwayne McDuffie website. Several of us on staff disagree, but if you're asking my opinion, this episode places Batman Beyond firmly into continuity about 5 different ways. Here's one. Kronos made a time machine, and before changing history, used it to go from his time, Batman Beyond's future, to our Batman's present, the Justice League's Watchtower. At the end of the episode, our Batman trapped him in a loop in Batman Beyond's present. In the repaired timeline, Batman and Batman Beyond both exist, and Terry and the future JLU were never killed. Vandal Savage has benefited from cyclical causality at least twice before, and this includes Hereafter, by the way, and to Superman at least once. It's a fact of time travel in our universe, and for the Barry Allen Flash in the comics whose death creates the lightning bolt that gives him powers initially. More to the point, young Bruce Wayne Batman never heard future Batman being called Terry. All he knows is that there will be someone after him who calls himself Batman. When he meets Terry in the first episode of Batman Beyond, he either suspects that this might be the guy, unlikely, or that some punk kid stole the suit he's going to eventually give to the real guy whenever he shows up. There's nothing in the pilot or the episode that contradicts either of these interpretations. Batman and John Stewart are the only people who remember the events of the Once and Future Thing. Terry, Old Bruce, Static, Warhawk, and the rest of the future Justice League Unlimited don't remember those events because, from their point of view, since Kronos never took over Gotham, those events never happened. Batman caught Kronos in the time loop before he went back to the Old West. Terry never met Kronos, and Kronos never souped up the Jokers, so Terry never died at their hands. Ditto for Static and the rest of the Future League. So yeah, confirmed that this episode doesn't prove Batman Beyond to be an alternate future, but the future of the DCAU. That being said, go back to the video. Hopefully this breakdown covers and answers all the questions that people keep leaving for us regarding this episode. But if I know anything about you guys, it's that you find something you might think I missed. But hey, that's okay. Maybe it'll become another video in the future. But now that that's laid out for you, it's time to come to our question of the day. Out of the entire DCAU, what's a plot point that confused you and still has you scratching your head? There's a lot of them out there, and honestly, that's the whole point of this show. Trying to solve the puzzles that may seem like they don't have an answer. I'd definitely love to hear what mysteries have you guys stumped. So as always, leave your comments down under in the Australia box. Before I go, I want to make sure to thank all of these lovely people who've helped support us on Patreon this month. If you want to see your name on the list, head on over to patreon.com/DCAU Watchtower. You can find the link in the description and we'll get you on there for a pledge of as low as $1. While you're over there, you can check out other perks we've got available, like voting in polls to pick upcoming episodes, live stream hangouts, custom artwork, merch, and more. Speaking of merch though, if you want to grab yourself a t-shirt but don't want to sign up to be a monthly patron, those are available in our store on Teespring, which you can find a link to in the description box below. As always, I've been Maddie Washburn, this has been The Vanishing Point, and we'll continue to stay those things so long as you guys continue to stay you. Love y'all, I'll see you in 2 weeks. If you're not subscribed, I don't think I'll see you in 2 weeks. You leave me guessing. Just go ahead and hit the buttons. It'd be nice. For real though, on that patron thing, like $1 a month, if all y'all do that, it'll help a lot.